Throughout history, humanity has been engaged in an unrelenting search for purpose and protection. This quest has often led us outward, to explore the vastness of the universe and search for distant gods to guide us and save us from our suffering. The most profound spiritual traditions, however, suggest that the ultimate answers are not found outward at all. They teach that the journey must eventually pivot from the external world to the internal landscape of the soul. It is here, within ourselves, that the search for meaning finds its true answer, revealing a direct connection to the divine that is waiting to be discovered. This inward turn is the foundational premise of what has come to be known as the Philosophia Perennis, or the Perennial Philosophy. Popularized in the modern era by the visionary thinker Aldous Huxley, this concept posits that beneath the rich and varied soil of the world's spiritual traditions lies a single universal truth. It is the conviction that there exists a divine ground of all being, a unitary reality, an ultimate source, and crucially, that this ground is not merely an abstract concept to be believed, but a living presence to be known firsthand. It suggests that the most disparate paths, whether they wind through the cathedrals of Europe, the ashrams of India, or the monasteries of the East, ultimately converge upon this sacred summit of human experience. Across this vast and diverse landscape of world religions and philosophies, a profound and unifying vision thus emerges: the existence of an inherent divinity within the human being. While expressed through unique cultural and metaphysical languages, from the Gnostic divine spark and Neoplatonic Henosis to the Hindu Atman, the Sufi unity of being, the Kabbalistic sparks, and the Taoist harmony with the source. This concept points to a universal human impulse. It is the perennial philosophy of an inward journey towards self-realization, a reunification with the ultimate ground of being. Following the pathways of Gnosticism, Neoplatonism, Christian mysticism, Vedanta, Sufism, and more, we will trace the contours of this universal map, arguing that this ancient quest for the God within is mirrored in the modern psychological process of individuation, representing a timeless and vital blueprint for human wholeness. The spiritual journey, therefore, is not one of invention, but of discovery. It is a process of awakening to what we have been all along. If you would like to support this channel so I can continue to make videos like this, there are links to donate via PayPal and Ko-fi in the description and pinned in the comments. I have been also thinking about making a Patreon where I post extra videos for $5 per month, so let me know in the comments if that is something you would be interested in and what you would like to see there. The easiest way to support the channel, though, is just to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next video. Thank you so much for the support as always. Now let's begin. Among the most dramatic and haunting expressions of this concept of inner divinity is that of the Gnostics, a diverse collection of spiritual movements that flourished in the early centuries of the Common Era. Their worldview, as has been covered pretty extensively on this channel, was founded upon a stark metaphysical dualism. They posited a remote, unknowable, and truly transcendent God who existed in a realm of pure spiritual light known as the pleroma, a Greek term for fullness. This was a reality entirely separate from our own cosmos, which the Sethian Gnostics viewed not as a divine creation, but as a catastrophic error, a flawed and corrupt imitation forged by a lesser ignorant creator god, the Demiurge. This cosmic architect, often identified with the God of the Old Testament, fashioned the material world as a prison, a labyrinth of darkness designed to entrap the spirit. It's within this cosmic prison that the human drama unfolds. The Gnostics taught that within us lies a fragment of the divine light from the distant pleroma. This is the pneuma, or the divine spark. It is an alien presence in a hostile world, a particle of celestial gold embedded in the mud of material existence. Its condition is one of exile, amnesia, and slumber, trapped within the mortal coil of the body and soul's passions. The spark forgets its noble origin, mistaking its prison for its home. This state of ignorance is the source of all human suffering, a profound sense of spiritual homelessness and alienation that cannot be soothed by worldly means. Liberation, therefore, could not be achieved through faith, obedience to law, or good works, for these were operations within the Demiurge's counterfeit system. The only path to freedom was through gnosis, a Greek word for knowledge. This was not the intellectual accumulation of data, but a direct, intuitive, and explosive revelation of one's true identity and origin. To attain gnosis was to remember oneself, to awaken from the drunken stupor of material life, and to realize in a flash of insight, I am a child of the light, not of this darkness. This awakening was the soul's turning back toward its source, the first step on the journey of ascent out of the material prison and back to its true home in the luminous expanse of the pleroma. For the Gnostic, salvation was an act of supreme self-recognition. If the Gnostic worldview portrays a cosmos born of conflict, the philosophical school of Neoplatonism, systematized by Plotinus in the 3rd century, offers a vision of a majestic and ordered harmony. Rather than a flawed creation, the universe is understood as a necessary and beautiful emanation from a single perfect source. At the apex of this reality stands the One, an entity so utterly simple, transcendent, and ineffable that it is beyond all predication, even that of existence itself. From this inexhaustible fountainhead, all of reality overflows, cascading downward through successive levels of being. First, the divine intellect, or nous, then the world soul, or psyche, and finally the material cosmos. The human soul in this schema finds its origin in the higher realms, but has descended into association with a physical body, becoming entangled in the multiplicity and temporality of the material world. The human predicament for the Neoplatonist is not one of imprisonment by a malevolent force, but of forgetting through distraction. The soul, captivated by the shadows and echoes of the physical realm, loses its awareness of its true luminous origin. The spiritual goal, therefore, is henosis, a term signifying mystical union with the One. This is not the rescue of a trapped spark, but a deliberate and methodical ascent back up the chain of being. It's a homecoming, a process of stripping away all associations of the material world to the soul's true nature in order to re-attain the simplicity and unity of its source. This ascent is achieved through a rigorous contemplative path. The journey begins with the purification of the self from bodily passions and irrational attachments through the practice of civic virtues. This prepares the soul for the next stage, a profound philosophical contemplation where it turns its attention inward, away from the fragmented world of the senses and toward the eternal, unified forms within the divine intellect. By focusing on its own highest part, the intellect, the soul recognizes its kinship with the nous. In the final ecstatic moment of henosis, even this intellectual self-consciousness is transcended, and the soul dissolves into an ineffable, non-dual union with the One. It does not become God, but rather realizes the unitive state that was its eternal, latent potential. Emerging from the same Hellenistic milieu as Gnosticism and Neoplatonism, the Hermetic tradition offers yet another lens through which to view the divine potential of humanity. Its foundational axiom, drawn from the enigmatic emerald tablet, is the famous principle of correspondence. What is below is like that which is above, and what is above is like that which is below, to accomplish the miracles of the one thing. This maxim establishes the human being as a microcosm, a small-scale living reflection of the macrocosm, the universe at large. It implies that the same laws, patterns, and divine principles that structure the cosmos are woven into the fabric of the human constitution. To know oneself, therefore, is to know the universe and its creator. In this view, the divine is not an imprisoned fragment from a distant realm, nor is it a separate being to be participated in. Rather, the divine intelligence is the very ordering principle of existence, present in its totality within each individual. The human soul contains the whole celestial hierarchy, from the planetary spheres to the ultimate divine source. The path to wisdom is thus an introspective one. By turning attention inward, the Hermetic practitioner can map the constellations of the psyche and discover the planetary intelligences, elemental forces, and divine archetypes that operate within. The inner world is a mirror of the outer, and by understanding one, the other is revealed. This journey of self-discovery is often framed through the powerful metaphor of spiritual alchemy. Here, the alchemist's laboratory is the self, and the subject of transmutation is one's own consciousness. The base lead, or prima materia, is the ordinary, unexamined self, burdened by ignorance and psychic dross. The goal is to transmute this lead into spiritual gold, the purified, illuminated consciousness that has realized its own divine nature and its unity with the all. This is achieved through a meticulous process of separation and recombination, analyzing and dissolving the gross elements of the personality, purifying them through contemplation and virtue, and reintegrating them into a new, more refined and holistic self. The great work of alchemy is ultimately the creation of the perfected human, one who has consciously unified the above and the below within their own being. The 14th century Dominican friar Meister Eckhart articulated a mysticism so profound and radical that it stands at the very apex of apophatic theology. For Eckhart, the connection to the divine was not one of reflection, participation, or liberation of a foreign element, but of an absolute and eternal identity. He taught that at the deepest point of the human soul, at its very center or ground, there exists a faculty he called the spark of the soul. This spark is not merely like God, nor is it a gift from God. It is utterly uncreated, untouched by time and space, and shares the same essence as the Godhead itself. The eye with which I see God, Eckhart preached, is the same eye with which God sees me. In this ground of the soul, there is no separation. The realization of this innate union is the focus of Eckhart's spiritual path, which hinges on the concept of Gelassenheit, a German word that translates as serenity or releasement. For Eckhart, this meant a radical emptying of the self. The soul must become a barren desert, free not only from attachment to worldly things, but also from all images, concepts, and even preconceived notions of God. One must let go of the will to possess, the will to know, and the will to be, achieving a state of pure, imageless poverty. It is only when the soul is completely empty and still that the divine can be fully experienced. This act of radical detachment makes possible what Eckhart famously termed the birth of God in the soul. When the soul has become a silent wasteland, free from the clamor of the ego and its creations, God has no choice but to rush in and reveal his own nature, which is the soul's own deepest nature. This is a perpetual, timeless reality that is unveiled in the present moment. The individual does not ascend to God. Rather, by becoming nothing, they realize the nothingness of the Godhead in which they have always existed. For Eckhart, the journey inward culminates not in finding something, but in becoming empty enough to experience the all that is already there. Within the theological framework of Eastern Orthodox Christianity, the concept of inherent divinity finds a unique and powerful expression in the doctrine of Theosis, or deification. This is not the realization of a pre-existing divine identity, but rather the process of becoming, by grace, what God is by nature. Summarized in the audacious aphorism of Saint Athanasius, God became man so that man might become God. Theosis is understood as the very goal of human life and the ultimate meaning of salvation. It posits that a transformative union wherein the human being, while remaining fully human, comes to participate in the divine life and energies of God. This transformation is not a solitary human achievement. It is predicated on the principle of synergy, a dynamic cooperation between divine action and human volition. God, in His love, extends His grace to humanity, but this grace must be freely received and acted upon. The path of theosis is therefore a lifelong endeavor of prayer, ascetic discipline, and participation in the sacraments of the Church. It is a process of purifying the heart and conforming the human will to the divine will, allowing the uncreated energies of God to permeate and transfigure the whole person, body, soul, and spirit. The bedrock of this entire doctrine is the incarnation. In the person of Jesus Christ, the divine and human natures are joined perfectly without confusion, change, division, or separation. This union creates a bridge between the created and the uncreated, making the deification of humanity possible. Christ's life, death, and resurrection healed and sanctified human nature, reopening the path to communion with God that has been closed by sin. Through baptism into Christ, the believer is incorporated into this renewed humanity and given the potential to grow into the divine human state that Christ perfectly embodied. Thus, for the Orthodox Christian, a journey inward is a journey into Christ, where one finds not an impersonal spark, but a personal God who invites humanity into an ever-deepening union of love. Journeying to the Indian subcontinent, we encounter one of the most systematic and influential schools of non-dual philosophy, Advaita Vedanta, most famously consolidated by the sage Sankara. Its central tenet is a statement of breathtaking simplicity and profundity. Atman is Brahman. This doctrine posits that the individual consciousness, or the innermost self, or Atman, is in its true nature identical and one with the ultimate singular reality of the cosmos, or Brahman. There is no division, no separation, and no difference between the subjective core of the individual and the objective ground of all existence. They are one and the same reality, experienced as different only through a veil of ignorance. This supreme truth is encapsulated in the great sayings of the Upanishads, ancient scriptural texts that form the foundation of Vedanta. Perhaps the most famous of these is Tat Tvam Asi, that thou art. This is not a metaphor or a statement of potential, but a declaration of an existing fact. The guru, instructing the disciple, points to the ultimate reality of the universe and declares that the disciple's own essential self is that reality. The individual self, which feels limited, separate, and bound to the cycles of birth and death, is an illusion. The true self, the Atman, is unborn, undying, and identical with the infinite timeless consciousness of Brahman. The human condition of suffering arises from failing to recognize this identity. This ignorance is called Maya, the cosmic power of illusion that superimposes a world of multiplicity, names, and forms onto the singular reality of Brahman. Trapped in the web of Maya, the individual identifies with the limited body and mind, forgetting their true infinite nature. The spiritual goal is therefore moksha, or liberation from this illusory bondage. Moksha is achieved through jnana, or knowledge, not book learning, but similar to the concept of gnosis, the direct intuitive wisdom that pierces the veil of Maya and realizes the unshakable truth of I am Brahman. It is the ultimate awakening, where the wave recognizes it has never been anything other than the ocean. Within the monotheistic current of Islam, the mystical tradition of Sufism flows with a unique emphasis on interiority, divine love, and the direct experiential knowledge of God. While Orthodox Islam emphasizes God's transcendence, Sufism complements this with a profound sense of his immanence. The path of the Sufi is one of transforming the entire being into a vessel capable of experiencing the divine presence. This journey is centered on the progressive annihilation of the false limited self, the ego or nafs, in order to realize one's true identity in God. This is the dual process of fana, or annihilation of the self, and baka, or subsistence and eternal life in the divine. The lover must cease to exist so that only the beloved remains. This path is illuminated by the controversial yet central doctrine of Wadat al-Wujud, or unity of being, most associated with the Andalusian master Ibn Arabi. This view holds that there is only one reality, one true existence in the universe, God, or Allah. All of creation, the entire cosmos of forms and phenomena, is nothing but the self-disclosure or manifestation of this single reality. The world is the shadow of God, the locus where his divine name and attributes are made manifest. Human beings, therefore, are not separate creations existing apart from God. They are loci of divine self-revelation. The goal is to move from the illusion of separateness to the realization of this fundamental unity. The primary instrument for this realization is the heart, or qalb. For the Sufi, the heart is not merely the seat of emotion, but a subtle organ of spiritual perception, an inner eye that can behold realities veiled from the physical senses. In its natural state, however, the heart is rusted and covered by the dust of worldly attachments and egoic concerns. The practices of the Sufi path, such as dhikr, the remembrance of God, contemplation, and selfless service, are designed to polish this inner mirror. As the rust is scraped away, the mirror of the heart becomes clear and still, capable of perfectly reflecting the light of the divine presence. In this purified heart, the Sufi finds that the seeker, the sought, and the seeking are ultimately one and the same. In the esoteric tradition of Judaism known as Kabbalah, the relationship between the divine and the human is depicted as an intricate, dynamic interplay. The human soul is not merely a reflection of the cosmos, but an integral and active component in its structure, corresponding to the Sefirot, the 10 divine emanations through which the infinite God becomes knowable and creates the universe. The soul is a microcosm of this divine structure, a tree of life within, containing the seed of every divine attribute, from supreme wisdom to an immanent kingdom. The most influential Kabbalistic school, developed by Isaac Luria in the 16th century, introduces a powerful cosmic myth to explain the state of the world. At the dawn of creation, the divine light was poured into the vessels of the Sefirot, but the intensity was too great and the lower vessels shattered. This cataclysm, known as the shattering of the vessels, resulted in holy sparks of divine light being scattered throughout the material world, becoming trapped in shards of brokenness, which are the source of evil and separation. Creation as we know it is therefore a realm of divine exile, where the sacred light is concealed within the profane. This sets the stage for humanity's ultimate purpose, tikkun olam, the healing or mending of the world. Unlike other traditions where the primary goal is personal liberation or ascent, the Kabbalist path is one of cosmic restoration. Humanity is charged with the sacred duty of finding and raising the sparks. This is not an act of abstract contemplation, but of sanctifying the material world through conscious, intentional action. By performing the mitzvot or commandments with the proper intention, By engaging with the world mindfully, and by transforming the mundane into the sacred, the Kabbalist frees the trapped sparks from their shells and returns them to their divine source. The spiritual journey is thus an eminently practical one, where every human action carries cosmic significance, making humanity a partner with God in the ongoing work of creation. Shifting our gaze to the philosophical landscape of ancient China, we find a conception of God that is at once radically immanent and elusively transcendent. At the center of Taoist thought is the Tao, a term often translated as the Way. The Tao is the unnameable, ineffable source and ordering principle of the cosmos, the natural flow of existence itself. It is not a personified creator deity who stands apart from creation, but the very process of reality unfolding. As the Tao Te Ching famously begins, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The divine is not an object to be known, but a current to be joined. The path to aligning with this current is defined by two central principles, Ziran and Wu Wei. Ziran refers to the inherent spontaneous nature of a thing, its self-so-ness. For a human being, it means discovering one's own authentic, original nature, free from the artificial constructs of social conditioning and rigid morality. This leads to the practice of Wu Wei, which translates as effortless action or non-interference. It is the art of acting in perfect harmony with the flow of the Tao, like a rower expertly navigating the river's currents rather than trying to row against them. It's an action that arises spontaneously from a place of inner stillness and alignment, rather than from striving and egoic ambition. Here again we see the principle of the microcosm. The human body is a small-scale model of the cosmos, a landscape of energies, channels, and forces that mirror the larger universe. The goal of the Taoist sage is to achieve inner harmony, to balance the complementary forces of yin and yang, to refine one's vital energy or qi, and to calm the monkey mind. By achieving this state of profound inner equilibrium, one naturally comes into resonance with the great harmony of the Tao. The divine is not a spark to be found, but a state of perfect, flowing balance to be embodied. To be in harmony with oneself is to be in harmony with the universe. While Buddhism, particularly in its earliest forms, is famously agnostic on the question of a creator god, certain Mahayana schools developed a concept that resonates powerfully with the theme of inherent divinity, Buddha nature. This is the doctrine that all sentient beings possess, as their fundamental essence, the intrinsic potential to become a Buddha. It is not a spark from an external source, nor an identity with a cosmic entity, but an innate, luminous, and pure nature of mind that is the very seed of enlightenment. Every being, from the highest celestial deva to the smallest insect, carries this sublime potential within them. The state of an unenlightened being is likened to a treasure buried beneath a poor man's hovel or a golden statue wrapped in filthy rags. The treasure is already there, perfect and priceless. The gold is untarnished. The problem is one of recognition. Buddha nature is said to be obscured by temporary adventitious defilements, the passions of greed, hatred, and delusion, and the cognitive obscurations of dualistic thinking. These veils, which constitute the illusion of a separate, suffering self, are not intrinsic to the mind. They are like clouds passing before the face of the sun. The sun is never stained by the clouds. It is merely, for a time, obscured by them. Therefore, the spiritual path in this context is not one of acquiring something new or adding a quality that is lacking. Enlightenment is not a construction, but a discovery, or more accurately, an uncovering. The practice of meditation, wisdom, and compassion is a process of cleansing the veils, of allowing the temporary defilements to exhaust themselves and dissolve. When the clouds of ignorance part, the ever-present sun of the luminous mind shines forth in its natural radiance. The goal is to realize what has already been true from the very beginning, that the fundamental nature of one's own mind is and has always been pure, awake, and compassionate. As we draw these diverse threads together from West and East, from theism and non-theism, from philosophy and religion, a luminous pattern emerges. Though the languages, symbols, and methods differ, the fundamental trajectory is the same, an inward turn toward a center of consciousness that is recognized as divine in nature. The ultimate goals, while colored by their cultural origins, converge on a shared horizon of union and realization. The Neoplatonist Henosis is a dissolution into the One. The Christian mystic's Theosis is a participation in the divine life. The Vedantin's Moksha is the realization of a non-dual identity. The Sufi's Fana is the annihilation in the beloved. The Kabbalist's Tikkun Olam is the restoration of divine unity, and the Buddhist enlightenment is the uncovering of an already present perfection. Each path describes a unique choreography, but the dance is always one of return, of reconciliation, of the part remembering its wholeness. This perennial archetype of the inner journey finds a remarkable parallel in the modern language of depth psychology, particularly in the work of Carl Jung. Jung's concept of individuation describes a lifelong process of psychological development, wherein a person becomes their true whole self by integrating the disparate and often conflicting aspects of their personality. It is a journey from egocentricity to a more inclusive and balanced psychic life, orchestrated by a central organizing principle that Jung termed the self. For Jung, the self is the totality of the psyche, encompassing both conscious and unconscious realms. It is the archetype of wholeness, order, and integration. In this psychological model, the divine spark of the mystical traditions can be seen as a symbolic representation of the self archetype. The self is the God image within the human psyche, the immanent organizing center that contains the blueprint for our fullest potential. The spiritual quest, seen through this lens, is the ego's gradual process of coming into right relationship with the self. It involves a descent into the unconscious to confront the rejected, shadowy parts of one's nature, and an ascent to integrate the highest, most numinous potentials. The reunification with the divine ground is, in psychological terms, the integration of opposites, conscious and unconscious, masculine and feminine, light and shadow, into the unified field of the self, achieving a state of psychic totality that the alchemists called the conjunctio. The spiritual map of the ancients becomes a psychological map for modern humanity, charting the same timeless journey toward wholeness. The philosophy of the divine spark is an inspiring and persistent current in the ocean of human thought. From the imprisoned spark of the Gnostics to the non-dual self of Vedanta, from the alchemical gold of the Hermeticists to the Buddha nature awaiting discovery, we find a remarkable consensus. A vast course of human wisdom declares that our ultimate reality is not found in separation, but in a profound intrinsic unity with the ground of being, and that unity is not a distant prize, but an ever-present, if veiled, reality. The enduring power of this idea not lies in its philosophical elegance, but in its universal invitation. It's a call to action, extended to every individual in every age. It is the summons to turn one's gaze from the distractions of the periphery to the silence of the center, to embark on the great adventure of self-discovery, and to dare to ask the most fundamental questions of identity. This is not a call to abandon the world, but to engage with it from a transformed center of gravity, recognizing the sacred not only within oneself, but in the world that a restored vision reveals. It is not a reason to feel prideful because one thinks they are God, but a point of inspiration that through turning inward we can discover what will set us free from suffering. It is an invitation to undertake the work of purification, contemplation, and integration to realize a deeper and more authentic connection through oneself to the cosmos. Ultimately, this shared vision of human potential is far more than a historical or theological curiosity. It is a foundational pillar of our collective spiritual heritage, offering a timeless and profoundly inspiring answer to the perennial questions of who we are and what we might become. In an age often characterized by alienation and fragmentation, the message of the universal spark serves as a powerful reminder that the resources for wholeness, meaning, and a sacred sense of purpose lie not in some external utopia, but within the uncharted depths of the human spirit, waiting to be discovered. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think of this philosophy. Does it resonate with you? As I mentioned in the beginning, if you would like to support the channel, there's a Ko-fi and PayPal link in the description and pinned in the comments. But the easiest way to support is just to like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a future video. Let me know in the comments if you would be interested in me starting a Patreon where I post extra videos and what you would like to see there. Check out my website, Oculus.com, and the other history channel I narrate for called Folks of Yore. Again, thank you so much for watching. Until next time.